about. When I woke up this morning, I thought a whole bunch more and ran downstairs and wrote them down. Because I think of spiritual development as what goes into the whole person, really. And I think of a lot of threads that went into making me what I am, and I'm sure you all have threads that went into making you what you are. So I'm a tapestry of whatever. And the tapestry goes down the first thread, I guess, to my ancestry among the German community that came to Missouri in the 1840s, 50s. I think a lot of them were kind of running away from militarism and I don't know what in Germany at that time. And in Missouri there was a lot of kind of liberal thinking. There was a Unitarian church in St. Louis and an ethical culture society in St. Louis. How many of you know what the ethical culture movement is? It's a humanist group started by a rabbi who didn't find himself in sympathy with all of Hebrewism. And so he, in 1876, he started something called the New York Ethical Society. He said, you know, when you think of world religions, what ties them all together is their sense of ethics, what rules they've set down for behavior. So I'm going to start something called the Ethical Society. We're going to concentrate on that. Now there are 22 ethical societies in the country. One in St. Louis and another one in Missouri are the farthest west, except one in Texas and one in California. So it's not a movement that has grown terrifically, but I just want to read you what they agreed to affirm and promote. 1, every person has inherent worth. Each person is unique. 2, it is our responsibility to improve the quality of life for ourselves and others. 3, ethics are derived from human experience. 4, life is sacred, interrelated, and interdependent. So you see how close that is to Unitarianism. And you maybe aren't surprised to learn that my father belonged to Unitarian Church in St. Louis when I was growing up, and my mother belonged to the St. Louis Ethical Society. So I haven't moved very far in my spiritual journey, really. But there are a lot of threads that have gone into what makes me what I am. And most of all, I guess my father, who grew up in this community that I just described, and who was very concerned about race relations, and he was very concerned about all kinds of things going on in the world. He was a law professor. I remember that my mother had a household helper who was an African American woman, and he always insisted on calling her Mrs. Fogg, and he addressed her that way rather than as Rosie or whatever her name was. And so that's a thread in my tapestry that right from the very beginning we regard African Americans and everybody else as people just like ourselves. Another big joy in my life and part of my spirituality, if that's it, has been music. I know that the Germans in Missouri brought a lot of their German musical culture with them. My one grandmother played the piano beautifully, and I'm sure I got my love of piano from her, and that is a continuing joy in my life. I really value that thread. After I graduated from high school, I went to Swarthmore College. that one that my father recommended because he kept track of what was going on in undergraduate education, and thought that would be a good place. Once he took me to see the campus, I never wanted to go anyplace else. But Swarthmore, of course, is a Quaker college, and I was there during World War II, 1941 to 45, when there were a bunch of Quaker fellow students, a number of whom were conscientious objectors, and so I'll come back to that, but I'll say that, of course, my husband John was the most important part of my spiritual development or development as a person. I'll tell you a funny story about how John happened to come to Swarthmore. He grew up in India, and at his school there, he happened to see a copy of Time magazine lying on the table. And on the front was a picture of an educator who, can't even remember his name, but he was president of Swarthmore College at the time, and he was on the Time magazine because he was instituting an honors program that was causing a lot of receiving a lot of notice in education at the time. So John picked up this issue of Time magazine, and that sounds like a good college. I think I'll go there. So he applied. Only bothered to apply to one place, and he got in. And so that's how John happened to come to Swarthmore. So I owe all my happiness to Time magazine. It's funny how things work out. As I said, Swarthmore was a Quaker college. There were a lot of people from Quaker high schools there, a number of whom were conscientious objectors. That atmosphere seeped into both John and me, and made us really aware of the pacifist philosophies which we have tried to adopt. And John was lucky enough to apply for and receive conscientious objector status. It was during the Korean War where they were still drafting doctors, though the other draft had ended. And so receiving this conscientious objector classification, then he was assigned to alternate service, which he had a few choices, and we chose Alaska. So our time in Alaska, which of course was very much part of our growing up, growing older, was due to that. John grew up in India with a father who did a lot of hiking, and I guess that's how John got his love of hiking and outdoors stuff. And so I inherited that when I married him. I consider that a very important part of my life and joy in life. Maybe I would have picked it up somewhere else, who knows, but that thread came from Grandpa Ferger in India and John's love of hiking. Last night, or yesterday evening at sunset, I was out walking in the snow, and gorgeous, beautiful sunset, and all around red and well. And I thought, I wouldn't be out here if I hadn't married John and learned to love the outdoors so much, and if he hadn't grown up with a father who loved the outdoors so much, and that's the way these influences come into your life and can make such a difference. So, after college, I went to graduate school and studied biochemistry. Well, you may not know, but biochemistry is the world's most beautiful science. It really is. When you learn what goes on in the cell, all those complicated chemical reactions that make life possible, it's just mind-boggling. It really is. And so, biochemistry turned out to be a spiritual gift in a way. That's was a big part of my life, assisting with research and then some teaching at Cornell, until I retired 21 years ago. I've kind of lost track of the field of biochemistry, but I think it's still beautiful. And, John wanted to be a family doctor, and when he finished his training for that, he signed up he took a position with a group that had an office in Dundee, New York. Dundee is a little town over on the west side of Seneca Lake, and that's how we came to the Finger Lakes. I'll tell you a funny story about Dundee. Our oldest daughter was 4 at the time, and her friends wanted her to go to Sunday school, so she went to Sunday school at the Presbyterian Church, and that was nice. So right away, she went a few times anyway. Right away, the director of that Sunday school asked me if I would like to teach. That sounds familiar. And meanwhile, we had been to a couple of Sunday services there, and I said to the director of the Sunday school, you know, I really don't feel quite comfortable in this church, and I'll tell you why. Because the other Sunday, I heard the minister say, the minister was a wonderful guy, we liked him, but here's what he said. You know, it's nice to have friends of all faiths and everything like that, but in the end, it's your Christian friends that will really stand by you. And I said to the Sunday school director, well, you know, I want my daughter growing up knowing people of other faiths and not thinking that Christian friends are the only ones who will stand by her. I know she'll have Jewish friends and others. And the Sunday school director said to me, oh, but aren't Jews Christians? So we decided that if that was a level of religious understanding in that Sunday school, maybe we ought to look someplace else. And meanwhile, well, we knew there was a Unitarian church over in Ithaca, and it was an hour-and-a-half drive, but maybe we should get acquainted with the Unitarian church in Ithaca. And that's how we happened to come here. We were welcomed, of course, by Grandma Minnie, who used to stand by the door and welcome newcomers. Somebody say something?
And Alma Russell. Say that
I don't hear unless I know where it's coming from.
I said Alma Russell.
Oh yeah, right.
What year is this, Martha? What year? What year is this that you came here?
Well, that would have been about 1962. So we were.
That was last century.
time in '64. We'd come and stay away for a while, then we'd move back.
If you just raise your hand when you say something, then I can look at you and then I can hear you. So whatever that, did you say something?
I'm talking to you.
Yeah, just raise your hand when you speak. Raise your hand so she can know you're speaking.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's just
Okay. Never mind.
She just wants to.
Then, at that point, when we were still living in Dundee, over in Seneca Lake, John's, I think I had said that he received a classification as a conscientious objector, and his number came up and he was supposed to pick some alternate service, and so he decided to go to Alaska with the Alaska Native Service, later the Public Health Service, and we were up there for 2.5 years, which was a wonderful experience and broadened our knowledge of different peoples of the world. We were mostly in Sitka, but also for a few months out on the Bering Sea, near the Bering Sea in the community of Bethel. So we really got a very good look at Alaska, and that was a broadening experience. When his term was over in Alaska, that his required time was up, we thought, okay, now it's time to decide where we really want to live for good. Where shall we go? He wanted a semi-rural place to practice family medicine, and we wanted to be near a university where I could pursue my biochemistry maybe later. And so, and we thought back to our days in the Finger Lakes, and how about Tompkins County? And having known the church here, that was a big attraction to us, among other factors, in choosing to come back here to settle down. So it's another thread that ran through our lives, which we're very grateful for. I wanted to tell you a little bit more. I've brought my life up to date now, so you know all the influences that affected me. I wanted to tell you a little more about the American Ethical Union back to my childhood days. There are now 22 societies throughout the United States. I don't know why it hasn't grown more like the Unitarians have, but Fran?
Well, and it's international as well. I mean, there's an ethical society in London.
Yes, there is.
I kept walking past it.
I think so.
They have a very nice house.
Yeah.
Do a lot of programming.
Yeah, but and of course there's I think an American Humanist Association. There are other groups with similar philosophies, but I don't know why that hasn't grown as much as Unitarian Universalism.
What are its beliefs that differ from Unitarianism that made your mother choose one when your father chose the other?
I think in that case it's where their parents had happened to bring them on. But of course, Unitarianism has more Christian roots, really, and so that flavor still influences people. Yeah, Fran?
You know, we have a community radio station, WRFI, and on Sunday at 9 o'clock, 9 to 11, they have a program called Skeptical Sunday. It's very, very interesting.
Skeptical.
Skeptical Sunday.
Okay.
And they have a lot of researchers, writers about the ethical movement and the atheistic or whatever you want to call it. It's a very interesting program. WRFR 88.1.
At what time?
9 o'clock on Sunday.
9 o'clock on Sunday.
Anyway, it seems to me there's a lot of discussion.
I got really excited when you spoke about the Ethical Society. I don't know if I've heard of it before, but now with the incident in Paris and the world, there's a global response right now with Je suis Charlie, that maybe this is a good time to, it could just blossom right now into the Ethical Society, because it's like an umbrella of all religions, bringing them all together, and that's kind of the spirit of freedom of speech, is, honoring everybody's point of view, everybody's beliefs.
Yeah.
So I think the two could really go well together. The timing is perfect.
And realizing how much they have in common,
Yes.
which is their ethical
Yes.
standards. That.
Yes.
Did you have some? I thought I saw your hand. No. So my life, my present personality is a tapestry, really, of all these threads, and I'm grateful for all of them. And I'm sure all of your lives are similarly put together of different threads. And hi, Bill.
Excuse me, would you like to talk a little bit about what your father's activism was like?
I know my father was very interested in the NAACP in St. Louis when we lived there before the war. Then during the war he was in Washington, as were a lot of law professors, because the law schools had pretty much drained out. And he was also very interested in civil liberties, and after the war he didn't want to go back to Washington University in St. Louis because they weren't admitting blacks at that time. They were refusing to. He had asked them several times. So he went to University of Indiana instead, and while there he was influential in helping start the American Civil Liberties Union Indiana branch, and he felt that was an important cause at that time. Does that answer your question? I forget what the question was.
I remember that, and I remember that at a certain point the ACLU didn't meet a certain ethical standard you thought they shouldn't.
I don't remember that. I know he did have some issues with them at some point, but I don't remember what they were. Hi, Fran.
Martha, you've been the head of the UUSC, our Social Justice Council here at the church. As a matter of fact, you probably founded it.
Probably.
I wondered if you could talk a bit about that, about your experience as the head of our Social Justice Council here at church, which has had...
Well, it's just always seemed to me that work for social justice should be a part of every church's mission and work, and so we should have such a thing. So we started it, and we have limped along ever since. And the people in this church are very involved in all kinds of issues, not only people who are members of our Social Justice Council. That organization is valuable because we get to know each other at our meetings, and we reinforce those ideas of social justice, I hope, through the church. But each of us is working in many other fields, and so it's not something that is only motivated by the church. What, Fred?
I've been coming here for about 3 years now, and I have a sense of the commitment to social justice in the church. Certainly the events over at Seneca Lake in the last 6 months have been an example of that. And I hear echoes of other things. Back a few years ago, I think there was some demonstrations up at the air base about drones and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would find it interesting if you could recall some of the major events in your time here since the 60s where the church or people in the church took a stand on some major issue, like the Seneca Lake thing. Could you recall some of those historically interesting things?
Do you want to chime in
Yeah.
before I answer that?
Yeah, just briefly, not, when my husband and son were killed by a drunk driver, Martha and her team took up the subject of drunk driving in Ithaca and in Tompkins County. And an organization was formed. The Postals were very active in it, in Park It, prevent alcohol-related killings and injuries in Tompkins County. And for years, under Martha's leadership, a great deal of programming was done with the police, with the probation department, with the town justices and the district attorney. We lobbied Albany and affiliated with a group called Remove Intoxicated Drivers, and lobbied to change and adopt laws that would stiffen the treatment of drunk driving. So I know you could have said all that yourself, Martha, but it meant so much to me personally that I...
Well, you know, the Social Justice Council within the church really doesn't do all these things. It's individuals who go out and either join in with groups that are already established and work with them, or start new groups, such as Park It, which really wasn't part of the church, but just something that some of us who knew each other in the church decided to put some time into. So in a way that you can say that the church is kind of a seedbed. Maybe it inspires us to go out and work in the community and in groups that are already there, or forming new groups such as Park It. But you can't really say those are part of the Social Justice Council didn't sit down and say, as a group, we're going to found a group to do something about drunk driving. It just kind of, these things kind of grow. And I can't say that the Social Justice Council itself, except as we get to know each other and share our concerns, does these things. Connie?
I think that the fact that it works out in the community is the way it should be, because otherwise we become very insular and we don't get anything done.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't think there's any apology needed for the fact that the Social Justice Council works in the community.
Okay.
Okay. I know this isn't the Social Justice Council meeting, but is there anything that people that spring out of that council here in this church know to do now about our racial problems in Ithaca?
Well, I know that Joanne and Deb in the back row have been very, especially Joanne has been very active in keeping track of what the police are doing in various instances and calling attention to it, and speaking at the county legislature and at legislative committees. She has really taken this as one thing, and that's the thing. Some of us have gone out and worked for Seneca Lake against the storage of explosive gases in Seneca Lake caverns, and some of us have gone out and worked, forget what somebody else mentioned. So it isn't the Social Justice Council that participates so much as individuals who get interested in this or that cause. And yeah, Joanne?
Well, Martha, actually, I get my inspiration from you to do this work, so thank you very much for being such a gracious inspiration to me. But it was you last year who wrote the legislature and went to talk to them about accountability for police officers at the county level, and it was you who stood out on 13 with a sign that says, "I want cameras on cops." And it was you that said, if my gay friends are telling me they're afraid of police, then I have to do something. So all of those things were you.
Yeah, but you taught me. That's why we're all here together.
It was you that I stood beside at Seneca Lake and got arrested, but it was you who withheld a little secret, didn't you, Martha? And that was that you had been arrested before.
A rap sheet.
Yeah,
And you
Dexter at that time and I were out in Nevada protesting nuclear weapons testing, and we got arrested out there, didn't we? What year was that?
It was early 80s. But there's another part of you that comes in here too, because we went out to Nevada. We were with other UUs from all over the country.
Oh, that's right.
And we trespassed after being in a ceremony with the Shoshone, who gave us permission to go onto their land. But while we were there, we also went and visited other friends that you had, because all over the world you have friends and you maintain connections, and we all, really look forward to the times you came to visit us in Philadelphia and kept those connections because we trust you so much.
Yeah, but the people we visited, that was the son-in-law of Grandma Minnie. So those connections come into play in various places and times, and that's the way the world works. And one reason I value this church so much, because we share so many ideals in common and work for them as we can in various ways. And when somebody mentioned Seneca Lake, it wasn't the Social Justice Council that said at a meeting, we're going to take a stand on this salt caverns issue. It was just that group who decided to go out together and do it. And yeah, Fred, what?
I didn't want to focus my question so much on the Social Justice Council as just the church itself and the church community and the way it has taken stands as a church community or individual members over the years. The church we go to back in Boston, in 72, I believe it was, the minister was a radical. This is an old-line congregational church in an old-line wealthy Boston suburb of Newton. He put caskets out on the lawn, and it's a major intersection. Happens to be Center Street and Church Street. Center and Church Street. And that action, and he actually stayed, that caused a little bit of disruption in the church, mind you. There was both sides. He actually stayed a few more years. He didn't get shot, lynched, fired, driven out of town, or whatever. When that issue came up a few years ago at a social church gathering, the emotions were still high. It was still an issue. So I was thinking more about how, your view of this church from the early 60s on, and maybe some of the larger issues that came by that were part of the thing. And if we've talked enough about those, great. But it seems to me it could have been the whole Vietnam War, could have been you're talking about the range of the civil rights marching in the mid-60s. You're talking about this. So if there's other kinds of things that should be kind of in our awareness, our history is such a powerful part of our lives, our church history. I would love to hear, if not now, we'll come around and interview again.
Well, here's the thing, it's a difficult issue. In order for this church to take a stand on anything, we need to have a congregational meeting called an appropriate number of weeks ahead of time, and we then have to propose a motion, and the church passes it or not. If the church passes a motion at a properly called congregational meeting, then you can say the church has taken a stand on Seneca Lake or whatever. But other than that, we can't say that. And we're careful not to say that we're representing the church when we go to any of these demonstrations, or we do take a banner that says UU Social Justice Council once in a while, but it always says UU Social Justice Council. We don't ever speak in the name of the church, so of course other people, outsiders, aren't that fussy about what they think. So if we, the Social Justice Council, and others do things that the church as a whole doesn't approve of, that I hope somebody will call a congregational meeting and we'll talk about it. You had something to say.
Yeah, two occurred to me listening to you talk. One was the Women's March, and I forget what year that was, but that was actually one that was done by National UU, and we participated.
Would you say a little louder?
Yeah, the Women's March to Washington. I forget what year that was. That was early in our membership here that occurred, and we went and represented the congregation in that march, right? And there was a big
Was that one of the civil rights marches?
Was that
Yes.
the Equal Rights Amendment, maybe?
It could be. It could be.
Yeah, we did have a banner made, remember?
We did.
had a banner made at the Unitarian Church so that we could carry a banner. So it is a very kind of iffy thing about whether we're speaking for the church or not.
Well,
Yeah,
that
we
was
tried
the
the
banner.
National UU. We joined with the National UU.
Oh, with the UUA.
Right, right. And the
Oh,
second
that's
one is
right.
the
It's
boots
UUA, yeah.
demonstration that got pretty popular also. And we had I think we had a demonstration at the church next door here, where there were boots lined up in the church.
Oh, I remember
in the
that.
Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the Quakers, the American Friends Service
They
Committee,
started
put
that,
that,
and the UUs
the
joined
exhibit
in. That's
together.
correct, yeah. So
I
those.
don't know what the UUA's rules are about speaking on behalf of the UUA.
Yeah.
I think they must have rules that permit the board to
Yeah, I'd be
make a
interested in that also.
resolution and then.
It seems to me there are other national issues that the UU might come, and join forces around.
Oh, when I say UUA, I'm not sure you all know that, it's Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, headquarters in Boston. And when they speak, it's probably by action of their board.
Martha, first, thank you so very much, because the wealth of your words leaves me wordless, and that's a big kind of echoing Fred, but the faith community here, I call it faith community rather than church. I think you're all struggling with that definition, society. Using Pascal, the heart has its reasons that the mind will never understand. Do you have anything that's still gnawing at you that you see as unfinished? Because you're so inspiring to hear that you want to begin the ethical society component, which gives homage to your parent. But is there any particular issue right now, besides Seneca Lake per se, that's in your heart that you see as a commitment in your life you need to do more?
Yeah, stop the wars. I mean, we haven't been doing much about militarism. You know, when you speak of faith, I don't really know what that means, but the best I can come to my faith is it makes a difference what we do. So we got to do something. And we don't know that, but things are better if we all try and do things than they would be otherwise. And there's nobody else going to make a difference if we don't. Hi, Joanne.
Martha, one of the things I'm trying to learn in life from you is to have more grace. So you do that very well. And one of the things I'm really afraid about, you've already been through, which is losing your spouse. How did you deal with that in such a way that leaves you this beautiful whole person that you are? Because I'm not sure I could actually survive that.
Well, I told myself I'd had 59 years of great marriage. What more can anybody ask for? So that's how I dealt with that. Liz, what?
Well, you told us how nature and music has shaped your life and continues to sustain it. Do you have any personal practices that you do to help your soul? Like, how do you jumpstart your day, for instance?
Well, I try to do some exercises, but then I always try to get outside for a walk every day.
So it's back to nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm surprised at how many people there are who try never to leave their house during the winter except to get in their car. They're missing the sunset I saw last night.
But you don't have a ritual in the morning that you might read something and then meditate or anything like some people do?
No, I don't.
Okay, you just jump in and go.
I could say, Liz, that Martha is often playing the piano at 11 o'clock at night because she tells me I can call her that late.
Right.
And we get emails.
I am rarely up.
We get emails after midnight.
What, Fred?
I have a question, but I want to lead with what I hope is not a revealing fact about your daily constitutional, and that is Martha and I were making music for a while until I crushed my fingers. I was playing the violin, she was playing the piano, and I was there and I used her bathroom and taped to the mirror our articles from current magazines like The Atlantic, The New Yorker. So there's, while you're brushing your teeth, you can read things. and I mentioned it, and you said your husband started that. So I took that.
John fixed this up. He put up a thing in the bathroom, and it had clothespins on it. And there was a magazine that he was reading and one that I was reading because, you know, we'd read at different speeds, and so rather than keep turning back from where he left it, we each had our own magazine up there.
But I wanted to ask about Sunday school. And as Sharon and I raised 3 children, each one of them reacted to the church Sunday school in a different way. And Sunday school is such a powerful part, I think, of a faith community to bring kids in. And is often the reason families start coming, because there's that desire to have the children have some ethical structure, framework, whatever. And your children, I assume, went here to Sunday school. They couldn't get out of it, I suspect.
Yeah.
Can you comment on...
Well, first of all, I'll say that I just loved my Sunday school at the Ethical Society in St. Louis. And I remember it with great pleasure. And my 3 girls all went here, and my 3 girls are all still Unitarians, all members of churches. 2 of them extremely active in their churches, and one not quite so active, but a member.
On the question of the Sunday school, that's part of the reason we came here originally, was to get some. And I felt really validated in having my children here in the Sunday school when I heard an argument between the little neighbor girl who was Catholic and my daughter, and they were 5 years old, and Janet is saying, "There is so hell," and Kathy is saying, "There is not hell." And I thought, you know, Kathy has this background behind her. She's just not herself saying there's not hell. So I thought it was well worth it.
If you want to know some of the things that motivate Martha Ferger, go to her downstairs bathroom and look at the reading rack.
Yeah, that's what.
What's on it?
Yeah, it's an education.
How long do you stay in there?
That depends.
Those New Yorker articles are really long.
So there's just time to go down and get some of, Joanne, have you got your pot boiling? That comes later.
Not yet. There will be some fried dough.
I'm raised a Catholic, but in my high school, when I was there between 69 and 73, we had a very progressive faculty. So they actually had a moratorium on the war, where they canceled classes for 3 days. And the English, history, and religion teachers made up a whole program. We saw photos of Auschwitz. We saw all sorts of stuff to educate us what war was about. It's a follow-up to you saying you still have in your heart to end all war. And my mom from occupied Ireland met my father in London. That's where they met, and that's what gives me an ecumenical view of my own living. And then my brother came home from Vietnam, a totally different person. But I felt in a democracy, everyone should give something back. And so that's why I went into Peace Corps. Have you ever thought of any national service program that I don't like to use the word ought, but could benefit all our young people in achieving your goal? Like we used to have VISTA, and we used to have, you know, some of those programs, nonviolent programs of the 60s.
I don't keep track of those things anymore, not having even teenage grandchildren. But I know probably the Friends Service Committee has things going.
But I guess I'm asking, do you think that would be a good idea, that all our young people, like in France, you can either go into the army or you can do something else, but everyone gives 2 years of their life to the country.
Some alternative service.
Alternative service, like your husband did. John?
There is the National USC, I think it's called. Bill Schultz heads up. I mean, they're still in Haiti, doing work in Haiti now.
You have to speak up.
Yes.
You have to speak up.
There's an organization called, I believe, the UUSC, which
Union Service Committee?
Yes, yes. And I know they're still in Haiti, working in Haiti. They went down there initially for the catastrophe, and they still have a group down there working. And we do support them.
What, Fran?
I don't hear
Two
that.
Frans here.
If anybody's looking for an issue to work on, we should be contrary to all these drones. Because pretty quick they're liable to start using them on us, is what I'm thinking.
Was the word drone?
Maybe you already said that, I don't know.
Good point, Fran.
No, nobody has said that.
The Catholic worker group here in Ithaca has been very active in the drone issue, and they have gone up and held demonstrations and Hancock Air Force Base, where the drones are launched from.
And they've been arrested and jailed.
Yeah.
And so there is a very strong anti-drone program that's
well, but let's say that drones can be used from other than military service.
Right.
Yes.
The delivery of mail, the many different things that small drones can be useful for. So it's not all military.
They do amazing photography, and also they do amazing photography.
Yes.
And they also can deliver medical supplies into a difficult area.
and do a lot of surveillance.
So drone is a good or bad word, depending on its
Like
use.
the internet, much like the internet.
What's Andy?
So Martha, are you going to have to sign up for your ethical society meeting? Is there going to be a meeting? What are you thinking? Are you going to do this? Do you want help? I'd be happy to help.
Tell me what you were proposing.
A meeting about how to start an ethical society.
How to start an ethical society?
Yeah, a chapter, is that what you were thinking? A chapter? And
Yeah, why would we want to do that? Because
I thought
their
that's
goals
what
are
you-
so much the same as our church.
Oh, I thought you said you wanted to start.
No, she didn't say that.
Oh, I misunderstood.
I thought so too. I thought you started out by saying that you wanted to create an ethical society here.
No, I didn't mean to say that, because I think what the ethical societies, 22 of them across the country, stand for is so much similar to what we stand for, that there wouldn't be any need for both in a city this small.
It's 10 o'clock, and let's take, say, 2 more comments, and then let people get going for the morning
Okay,
activities.
2 more comments. Joanne had one.
So Martha, why did you take such measure for Seneca Lake? Can you tell people that?
Well, that's the service on February 15th. Just
You're going to do
seemed an important thing to do. I'll have to think philosophically to be part of the one on February 15th.
Yes.
What is your court date? Your court date?
Oh, in March.
I hope she's amplified.
Okay, Fred says that's the end.
I think we should give people a chance to get going. I would like to do a postscript of something I heard John Lewis say this morning. John Lewis is in Congress and was 23 years old when he was on marching in Selma. He quoted an African proverb that echoes a little bit about what you said, that says, when you pray, move your feet.